Welcome to another deep dive. We're going to be really digging into something I think we all struggle with, the human side of software engineering.
Yeah, the stuff they don't always teach you in the codathons.
Right. Like, how do you actually build a team that doesn't just ship code, but ships, like, amazing code?
Right.
We're diving into this article by Drew Harris.
Oh, yeah, he's been around the block a few times.
Seriously. And he makes this point about innovation being the, quote, lifeblood of software companies. But then he's like, hold on, you can't have that without managing expectations.
It's so true, though. Everyone wants to be innovative, but then reality sets in.
So why is this expectation equation, as he calls it, so important in software specifically? What makes it different?
Well, software, it's like, think of it like, building something. But the blueprint keeps changing constantly.
While you're building it.
Exactly. Like, imagine building a car, but halfway through, the client's like, actually, can we make it a convertible? And you're like, dude, the roof's already on.
And the client is?
Client's a product manager, the stakeholder, even the user sometimes. And they're all important voices. So you have to be ready to adapt and like incorporate that feedback. It's just part of the game. That's where scope creep can really get you, is this constant, oh, and can it also do this? And suddenly your elegant solution is this Frankenstein monster of features.
And innovation dies.
Innovation, budget, your sanity, everything. So Harris, he gives us these three pillars for, not letting that happen. Solid engineering leadership. The first one is, wait for it, trustworthy leadership.
Okay, sounds like a given, but what does that actually look like, day to day in the trenches with a team?
Easier said than done, right? But it goes beyond keeping your promises. Like anyone can say they'll do something, but a trustworthy leader is upfront about the challenges. Harris even says that admitting when things are tough can actually build more trust because it shows you're being real.
It's about honesty.
Exactly. And that honesty creates a space where your engineers feel safe to speak up,
Yeah.
to share ideas, even to like raise a red flag early on if they see a problem. You can't innovate if you're afraid to say, uh-oh, I think we might be going down the wrong path.
And that feeling of safety, of being able to speak your mind, that leads into Harris's second pillar, empowered engineers.
Right.
Right.
Like you want your team to feel like they own their work, not just that they're, code monkeys churning out lines.
And he ties that to accountability, which, I don't know, that word can feel a little intense sometimes. How do you make accountability a good thing?
It's funny, right? We hear accountability when we think, oh, someone messed up.
Right, like get ready for the blame game.
Exactly. But Harris is getting at something way more positive here. He's talking about connecting an engineer's work to something bigger, something they can be proud of.
So it's less about like pointing fingers when things go wrong.
And more about recognizing their wins, giving them the space to grow and learn and really own their piece of the puzzle.
Because when you feel ownership, you're more invested in the outcome.
100%. Think about it. Would you be more likely to go above and beyond in a job where your boss is constantly breathing down your neck?
Or one where they trust you to get things done, maybe even throw in some cool ideas of your own.
Exactly. It's all about fostering a sense of responsibility, not just enforcing it.
Which brings us to, drumroll please, Harris's third pillar. And it's a big one.
The one, the only, managing expectations.
He really seems to hit on this one from every angle, doesn't he?
Well, it's the key to everything else we've been talking about.
Because if expectations are misaligned, the whole project can go off the rails no matter how talented your team is.
Right. You could have the best engineers in the world, but if they're building something the client doesn't actually want.
It's a recipe for disaster. So Harris breaks managing expectations down even further into these 4 key communication strategies.
Because at the end of the day, so much of this comes down to communication, doesn't it?
It's like they say, communication is key.
It really is. And it's not just about talking. It's about listening, too. But we'll get to that.
We will. But first, let's start with, the most basic one, regular updates. Seems pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just sending out a weekly status report.
Oh, absolutely. Remember how we talked about software being this kind of moving target?
Constantly evolving?
Right. And regular updates are how you make sure everyone stays on target, especially those stakeholders who might not be as technically savvy.
So it's about keeping everyone in the loop regardless of their technical background.
Precisely. From the engineers to the project managers to the clients, everyone should have a clear understanding of where things stand at any given time.
No surprises.
Exactly. And it's not just about celebrating the wins. It's also about, proactively identifying challenges so you can address them before they become major roadblocks.
So it's like instead of just saying, hey, we're on track, you're also saying, here are some potential bumps in the road, and here's how we're planning to navigate them.
Exactly. It's about managing expectations, remember.
And that ties into Harris's next point beautifully, proactive transparency. Like instead of just hoping those bumps in the road magically disappear.
Yeah, like we said, no surprises, not in software.
So he's saying good leaders, they actually get ahead of those challenges, which, takes guts. So why is that proactive approach so valuable?
Well, for starters, it builds trust. Like if you're constantly hitting your team or your stakeholders with these last-minute fire drills.
People are going to start wondering what's going on.
Exactly. But if you're upfront about the challenges, if you say, hey, we're facing this hurdle, but here's the plan, it shows that you're on top of it.
And it gives people a chance to actually be part of the solution.
100%. You're not just dictating from on high, you're inviting collaboration.
Mhm.
And that not only leads to better solutions, it also strengthens those relationships.
Which is key because, let's face it, software development is a team sport.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And speaking of teamwork, Harris's next point about communication channels is super relevant here. He's basically saying it's not just what you communicate, but how you communicate it.
Right. Like you might tell your engineering team something one way.
But then you need to present that same information to, say, the marketing team in a totally different way.
Because they're going to have different needs, different levels of technical understanding.
Exactly. So Harris talks about using multiple channels of communication. Like maybe your engineering team is all about those detailed reports, but your stakeholders just need a quick visual summary.
Right. A graph, a chart, something easy to digest.
And a good leader recognizes that and adjusts their communication style accordingly. It's about being adaptable, speaking the language of your audience, so to speak.
Okay, and last but not least, we've got feedback loops. Harris is really big on this idea that communication isn't just a one-way street.
Right, it's a conversation, not a lecture.
So how does that play out in the real world of software development? What does it actually mean to build in those feedback loops?
It means actively listening to what your team is telling you. And not just your team, but also your stakeholders, your users, everyone involved in the project.
Because they're going to have valuable insights.
Absolutely. They might see things that you're missing. They might point out potential problems or suggest new features that you never even considered.
So it's about being open to those suggestions, even if they mean going back to the drawing board.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, you're not building software in a vacuum. You're building it for people to use.
And if those people aren't happy with what you're building, it doesn't matter how technically brilliant it is.
It's not going to be successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, feedback loops, they're crucial.
It's all about staying flexible, adapting, and making sure that what you're building aligns with everyone's expectations.
Which brings us right back to Harris's main point, right? Manage those expectations and everything else falls into place.
It's like the foundation upon which all successful software projects are built. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Huge thanks to Drew Harris for giving us so much to think about.
And to you for joining us on this journey through the human side of code. Until next time, remember, building great software is as much about communication and collaboration as it is about technical prowess.
And on that note, here's something to chew on. Think back to a time when a software project you were part of went really well. What role did communication play in that success? Food for thought. Catch you on our next deep dive adventure.